A scary place.
She's just declared a major incident.
We're here now.
But underneath it all, there's quite a lot of hope.
Love, love, love.
The new series of Ambulance continues tomorrow at 9 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Cliff, don't do this. That document's the only proof we have.
No, we don't need this. I changed the TV license. Everyone's going paperless now.
Oh, okay. Great. Sorry about that.
Managing your TV licence needn't be a drama. Go paperless at tvlicensing.co.uk.
Now, the BBC News at 1 with John Kay in Washington and Ben Brown in the studio.
Today at 1, Donald Trump sweeps to victory in the US presidential election, declaring a golden age for America. He will make an historic return to the White House 4 years after he was voted out of office.
This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again.
But there's still no word from his Democratic rival. Vice President Kamala Harris decided not to address her supporters last night. And at home, in her first Prime Minister's questions, the new Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, condemns Labour's previous attacks on Donald Trump.
And also in the programme this lunchtime, jailed for 31 years, the GP who disguised himself as a community nurse in a plot to poison his mother's partner. And Prince William tells the BBC his wife is making good progress in her recovery from cancer as he presents the Earthshot Environmental Awards in South Africa.
She's doing really well, thanks, and hopefully she's watching tonight and sort of cheering me on. But no, she's been amazing this whole year, and I know she'll be really keen to see it tonight be a success.
On BBC London, the Dartford crossing trips, which ended with bailiffs at the door. We reveal how private debt collectors were used to claim more than £100 million in the past 5 years.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1, live from Washington, D.C. And it's breakfast time here in the US Capitol. America is waking up to the news that Donald Trump will be returning here to the White House. 4 years after he was voted out of office, the Republican candidate is celebrating an historic comeback and promising a new golden age for America. His rival, the Democratic candidate, Kamala Harris, is expected to address her supporters later. First, this lunchtime, our correspondent Jessica Parker has the story of the night.
Donald Trump's re-entry onto the centre stage of US politics is now complete.
We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy?
4 years after being ejected from the White House, he's on his way back in, to the jubilation of these crowds in Florida.
But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
His running mate was among those invited to absorb the adulation.
And I think that we just witnessed the greatest political comeback in the history of the United States of America.
We are off to the races. We have our first poll closures.
The countdown began overnight. At first, the results were predictable, but then swing states started falling to the Republican.
Here we go. North Carolina projected for Donald Trump.
One by one.
And we are now in a position to project Georgia.
by one.
Project Pennsylvania for Donald Trump.
Then the big call.
Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States, winning what had been expected, of course, to be a razor-tight and historic race.
Okay, I'm waving it.
The Democratic candidate Kamala Harris met volunteers on election day, but on election night at her campaign watch party, there was no victory speech. She didn't even appear.
We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the Vice President tonight.
This is the machinery of democracy in America, fed by the votes of millions, including in Erie, Pennsylvania, a swing county in a battleground state within a divided nation. Darlene, though, can't wait for a Donald Trump return.
We don't need another 4 more years of high inflation, gas prices, lying, close the border, murder. America comes first.
But others dread it.
I don't want an autocrat. I don't want someone who is convicted of a felon to be the #1 person in our political environment.
Donald Trump was convicted in May for falsifying business records.
We will never give up. We will never concede.
Other ongoing criminal cases include allegations he tried to overturn the 2020 election in the run-up to the Capitol riot. He denies wrongdoing. The sun's coming up after a long night leading to this country's next chapter. For Donald Trump's critics, he's nothing less than an outright threat to democracy, someone totally unsuited to America's highest office. Even so, he tapped into many people's concerns about the economy and immigration, once again proving to be a divisive but effective campaigner. His road back to the White House has been dramatic, even dangerous. In July, Donald Trump survived an assassination attempt.
With the COVID, with...
The same month, Joe Biden dropped out of the race for the Democrats after that disastrous debate performance.
I accept your nomination to be president.
Kamala Harris taking her boss's place as the candidate. Now the question for the Democrats, what went wrong?
Where Kamala Harris went wrong is going to be a question that is, a huge amount of introspection for the Democratic Party. But I do think her decisions in the closing weeks of the campaign to focus very, very heavily on all the things she thought were wrong with Donald Trump and not as heavily on why she could rebuild the U.S. economy, that could be one area.
This man's journey has enthused, appalled and fascinated onlookers. But whatever feeling he inspires, this fact remains. Donald Trump will soon once again take charge of the most powerful nation on earth. Jessica Parker, BBC News in Washington, D.C.
Well, Donald Trump's running mate and soon-to-be Vice President J.D. Vance described the victory as the greatest comeback in the history of the United States. So let's just have a look at some of the numbers and at how Mr. Trump has redrawn the political map overnight. We're still waiting for a few results, but this is how things are currently looking. The red represents Donald Trump's Republicans. The blue is for Kamala Harris and her Democratic Party. And as you can see, there is an awful lot of red states on that map. The magic number from right across those states that they had to get to is 270 in what's called the Electoral College. That's the threshold to win. And as you can see, Donald Trump has reached that, even though some states still have to declare. And in terms of the popular vote, that's people across the whole country, Donald Trump currently stands at 51% and Kamala Harris at 47%. Well, Katrina Perry is based here in Washington for the BBC. We saw her in that piece, hosting the results programme, breaking the news overnight. And she's still up, and she's with us here. Katrina, just explain, this wasn't some statistical quirk. This is decisive and happened much more quickly than most people are expecting.
Depends what side of the fence you're on, John. I mean, the Trump campaign have been briefing for the last day or two that they felt they'd be able to hold a victory rally on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, that they would have garnered enough of those electoral college votes to have a majority to declare Donald Trump president. And that is just what they did. But one veteran Democratic strategist described it to me as a shellacking, basically a wipeout. Donald Trump, the Republican Party, have taken the White House. They've flipped control of the Senate and looks like they're going to hold on to control of the other house here in Congress, the House of Representatives. That gives them immense power to pass their legislative agenda through. As we speak now, it looks like Donald Trump is going to take all 7 of those swing states that we've been talking about for so many weeks now. I'm not sure anyone had that on their bingo card, given how close the polls had this race. But that's why we've always been warning about the margin of error when there are close polls, and that's what we've seen writ large here. We thought it would take a bit longer because of how many postal votes there were for different reasons in different states. But this is a decisive victory for Donald Trump. He's managed to broaden the base of the Republican Party, including taking in some erstwhile Democratic voters.
Katrina, thank you very much indeed. We'll speak to you again a little bit later. Shellacking, that is the word we have to use. Well, it was the state of Wisconsin that took Donald Trump over the line to victory. That was just a couple of hours ago. And we can head there now, speak to our correspondent, Carl Nasman. And Carl, Wisconsin was one of those so-called critical swing states.
It absolutely was, and we were at a watch party among the Democrats that really felt a bit more like a funeral once those results started coming in. Republicans, meanwhile, they're celebrating, of course, after what this state was able to do. We heard from one Republican official who told me, as Wisconsin goes, so goes the nation, and that seems to be true. This is the state that delivered the winning margin for Donald Trump back in 2016. It did so again this year, and what the party and Donald Trump was really able to do was chip away at this blue wall, that coalition of voters that typically votes Democratic, now turning Republican. We're talking about union members, rural voters, even some members of minority communities. Right here in Madison, we saw this big margin for Kamala Harris, also in the biggest city, Milwaukee, but that simply wasn't enough to make up that gap. And now what we've seen, this divided nation with this comeback by Donald Trump, really could begin to be reshaped as we see Donald Trump now set to regain the White House.
Carl, thank you for that update. Well, Rowan Bridge is in Arlington in Virginia, and he's been chatting to voters there. Rowan, what do they make of the results?
Well, it's morning here in America, as you say, John, and people are waking up this morning, coming out for their breakfast, just starting their day to the news that Donald Trump is going to be their next US president. And this is where America comes for breakfast, the diner, the classic American experience. This is Bob and Edith. They've been here for more than 50 years, so they've seen presidents come and they've seen presidents go. You can get your breakfast 24 hours a day. We've got the grill on the go over here, as you can see. We've got some fried onions, some potatoes. They're going to make me an omelette in a minute. And, of course, the bottomless cup of coffee, just what you need to get you through an all-night presidential campaign. But this has been a particularly divisive presidential campaign, with both sides fearing what the other would mean for the future of America. And you really saw that reflected in people that we spoke to this morning. Democratic voters, this is a heavily Democratic area, using words like devastated and despondent. Republican voters energized and excited for what the future brings, a new golden age as they see it under Donald Trump, as they told me as they sat down for their breakfast earlier this morning.
It's hard to get my brain around the fact that we've elected this fool. And for me, I'm a retired lawyer, and he took an oath of office, which, as a lawyer, any American should think that's really important when you take an oath of office to preserve and protect the Constitution. And then he sat in the Oval Office for 4 hours on his hands while people were attacking our Capitol and threatening to kill his own vice president. That's breaching the sacred oath of office.
I am thrilled. I'm excited. I'm happy. Finally, we are getting the U.S. back. I cannot express how happy I am. I didn't sleep at all. It means safety, prosperity, and also not only for America. There is expression: if America coughs, the rest of the world gets a cold.
He has given us a higher quality of life.
as a small business owner, the reduction of restrictions on business, and that helps me, as a small business owner. And also just like advocating for the African American community. I've seen what kind of president he's been already.
Donald Trump's won a decisive victory, but he faces a divided nation, and bringing people together in a place like this diner is going to be a difficult task going ahead.
Rowan Bridge in Virginia, thank you. Well, in Westminster, the new leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has criticised the Labour government for previous attacks on Donald Trump during her first Prime Minister's question since she was elected Conservative leader at the weekend. Our political correspondent, Ben Wright, reports.
What's your reaction to Trump's victory, Prime Minister?
As the fallout from Donald Trump's victory begins to sink in here, the Prime Minister headed to the Commons to face questions from a newly elected leader of the Conservative Party. And just ahead of their first Commons joust, Keir Starmer gave his reaction to last night's result.
Mr. Speaker, can I begin by congratulating President-elect Trump on his historic election victory. As the closest of allies, the UK and US will continue to work together to protect our shared values of freedom and democracy.
I come to the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch said she would be a constructive leader of the opposition, but her first question sounded anything but, asking about a recent meeting with Mr. Trump.
The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met him in September. Did the Foreign Secretary take that opportunity to apologise for making derogatory and scatological references, including, and I quote, Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order. And if he did not apologise, will the Prime Minister do so now on his behalf?
The Foreign Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed a number of issues of global significance. It was a very constructive exercise.
Kemi Badenoch then offered Keir Starmer a suggestion.
Will the Prime Minister show that he and his government can be more than student politicians by asking you, Mr. Speaker, to extend an invitation to President Trump to address Parliament on his next visit?
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is giving a masterclass on student politics. We live in probably a more volatile world than we've lived in for many decades. It is absolutely crucial that we have a strong relationship, that strong special relationship forged in difficult circumstances between the US and the UK. We will continue to work, as we have done in the 4 months in government, on issues of security, our economy and global conflict.
The Lib Dem leader asked about Mr. Trump's possible stance on the war in Ukraine.
If the US will not oppose President Putin and support our brave Ukrainian allies, the UK must lead in Europe so that together we do.
Keir Starmer insisted the UK would continue to back Ukraine, but from European security to global trade, the government is braced for a presidency that will have an impact here. Ben Wright, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer had earlier congratulated Donald Trump on what he called this historic victory. Our political editor, Chris Mason, is in Westminster this lunchtime. And Chris, what's your assessment? What do you think a second Trump presidency means for what we call that special relationship?
Yes, hello to you, John. I think a real sense on our programme today of how politics is being recast and remoulded, both here at home at Westminster with the arrival of Kemi Badenoch as Conservative leader, and then President-elect Trump on the international stage. You'll hear lots of references in the coming days to the quote-unquote special relationship. And yes, there are elements of that relationship between London and Washington that are long-standing and do transcend whoever happens to be Prime Minister and whoever happens to be President. But we shouldn't underestimate just what a big moment this is. There was a wonderful phrase this morning from Lord Hammond, the former Conservative Foreign Secretary, telling the BBC that there would be deep breath time in Whitehall. A splash of understatement there, not because people here hadn't war-gamed a potential outcome where Donald Trump won. They had. But there can be a difference between a hypothetical and a reality, and there can be a difference between plans that are made and their contact with reality. We're about to find out just what that difference looks like.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. Of course, it's not just Westminster. The world has been reacting to Donald Trump's return to the White House. In a moment, we'll speak to Steve Rosenberg, who's in Sochi, James Waterhouse, who's in Kyiv. But first, let's speak to our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, who's in Jerusalem. And Lise, what do you think this second Trump presidency is going to mean for the conflict in the Middle East?
Well, John, it was not surprising that of all the world leaders to congratulate Donald Trump, it was the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu who was so quick off the mark. And also noticeable is that it wasn't just the kind of political message that we saw Sir Keir Starmer sending. It was warm, it was personal, it was addressed to Melania and Donald Trump, signed in true friendship from Benjamin and his wife, Sarah. All of the Israeli political leaders have not just hailed this huge victory by Donald Trump, as they put it, but also this very long, strong strategic partnership between Israel and the United States. This is the result that the vast majority of Israelis wanted. They remember how in Donald Trump's first term, he backed most of Israel's long-standing demands, including moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now, when it comes to Arab leaders, they also have spoken about the long strategic relationship between their country and the United States. But there's a consistent thread there as well. All of them to a leader, whether it's the president of Egypt, the emir of Qatar, the king of Jordan, the Palestinian president, all of them urge Donald Trump to bring peace and security to the region. And that, John, is the big question now. Will Donald Trump be the president he boasts that he is, the peacemaker, the man who wants to end wars, not start them? Or will he give his strategic partner, including his close friend Benjamin Netanyahu, an even freer hand to keep waging those destructive wars in Gaza and in Lebanon, and also, crucially, to hit Iran even harder?
Lise, thank you for that assessment from the Middle East. Let's speak to our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg. He's in Sochi. And Steve, how is Mr. Trump's re-election, his victory, being received in the Kremlin?
I tell you, John, what was really interesting today, the Kremlin seems to be going out of its way to give the impression that it's not excited by Donald Trump's victory. A Kremlin spokesman today said, as far as he knows, there are no plans for President Putin to congratulate Donald Trump. Don't forget, he said, that America is an unfriendly country which is involved directly and indirectly in a war with Russia. Part of the reason for this sort of downbeat reaction, I think, is what happened the last time Donald Trump was in power. In 2016, the Kremlin had very high hopes that President Trump would improve US-Russian relations. It didn't happen. But there's no doubt that what Donald Trump said on the campaign trail and what he didn't say would have gone down well with the Kremlin. So I think we can expect moves to improve that relationship.
OK, Steve, thank you. Let's go to our Ukraine correspondent, James Waterhouse, who's in Kyiv. And James, what's the mood in Ukraine then following this news about Donald Trump returning to the White House?
Well, hearing Stephen Lee's there, I think President Zelensky will both want to keep fighting this war, which entirely depends on help from the US, and he will be desperate to form some kind of functioning relationship with Donald Trump. Now, he was early to congratulate him as well. He described a great meeting they both had in New York, and he was trying to sell his country. He was describing the economic and political opportunities, a partnership between Donald Trump and himself, what that could provide. But these are incredibly uncertain times. American support has been laid out for the coming months by the outgoing Biden administration in terms of armoured vehicles, but beyond that, we just don't know. If Donald Trump is turned down by Russia for any kind of peace negotiation, then he might step up support for Ukraine. And that is the very faint hope here this morning.
James Waterhouse in Kyiv, thank you. Well, that's all from Washington for the moment. We'll be back here a little bit later. It is a beautiful autumn day in the US Capitol. But first, let's get more of the rest of today's news with Ben in the studio. Ben.
John, thank you very much indeed. A GP who tried to murder his mother's partner
has been sentenced to more than 31 years in prison. Dr. Thomas Kwan, who worked in Sunderland, disguised himself as a community nurse to inject his victim with a fake COVID jab, which was in fact poison. Well, our North of England correspondent Fiona Trott has the latest for us from Newcastle Crown Court. Fiona, just bring us right up to date.
What's extraordinary about this case is who Thomas Kwan was and the lengths he went to. He was a GP, a respected member of the community. He used fake phone numbers, fake NHS letters, fake number plates, and disguised himself as a community nurse just so that he could get inside his mother's home and try to kill her partner. Why? Because that man, that 71-year-old man, stood in the way of him inheriting his mother's wealth first. As the prosecution said, sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction.
You don't have to say anything.
A respected GP, now arrested in his pyjamas.
Anything you do say may be given as evidence.
He's suspected of attempted murder, but look how calm he appears.
All defence is okay.
But that's not surprising. Here he is just weeks before checking into a hotel under a false name, preparing for murder. The next morning, he set off, wearing a hat, mask and tinted glasses as a disguise.
His disguise was so good that when he arrived at his mother's house, even she didn't recognise him and asked him to check her blood pressure. He then told Patrick O'Hara he was going to give him a COVID booster injection, but it wasn't that. It was a poison, causing a life-threatening flesh-eating disease.
He told the court it felt like his arm was on fire, an excruciating pain, he said. Since then, he's been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and says he's been left a shell of an individual. So what poison was used? After searches at the GP's garage, one expert thinks it could have been a type of pesticide. And there was so much more. Castor beans and a recipe for ricin, which could be used as a chemical weapon, and a copy of the terrorist's handbook. Police also found fake ID. The lengths he went to were extraordinary, all because of greed. A doctor with a split personality who's now on his way to jail. Fiona Trott, BBC News, Newcastle.
Well, Thomas Kwan showed no emotion and looked directly at the judge when she told him it was an audacious plan to murder a man in plain sight, and he very nearly succeeded.
You set out to harm Mr. O'Hara when he was in his own home, where he had every right to feel safe. And you gained entry to his home in the most calculated and callous of ways, under the guise of a trusted healthcare professional.
Well, outside court, Patrick O'Hara was asked if he had any feelings about Thomas Kwan, who was sitting metres away from him. He said that he didn't, but he felt sorry for his mother, who the pensioner is now separated from, and he told us he was satisfied with today's sentence.
First of all, I'd like to thank the judge for that sentencing, and I think justice has been done today. And firstly, I'd like to thank the police and the prosecuting department for the absolute magnificent job in bringing this man to justice. And I can't thank them for their sincerity to my family in this whole trial and this year as went by. Secondly, I'd like to thank the NHS, especially the RVI hospital, the consultants, the staff in Ward 47 and the outpatients in the plastics department. Without this, I don't think I would have survived. And they've been absolutely fantastic for their professionalism and their care towards me and my family.
Well, Mr. O'Hara has shown courage throughout this trial, and the mental effect it's had on him was clear in court. How different that was to Thomas Kwan, who showed no emotion at all. A man who thought his attention to detail would prevent him from getting caught. Well, it didn't. And today he's been sentenced to over 31 years in prison.
Fiona, thank you very much indeed. Fiona Trott reporting. There have been protests in Israel after the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, sacked his Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant. Mr. Netanyahu said he was being dismissed because of what he called a crisis of trust between the two men. Mr. Gallant had pushed for a hostage release deal in Gaza. He'll be replaced by the country's Foreign Minister, Israel Katz. In the Spanish region of Valencia, 89 people are still missing after last week's flash floods. More than 200 people are already known to have died. Meanwhile, the Spanish Prime Minister has announced 11 billion euros worth of funding for Valencia.
but there has been severe criticism of the government's response to the disaster. The Reform UK MP, Lee Anderson, has been ordered to apologise in the House of Commons for his behaviour towards a security guard. Mr Anderson has accepted he was upset and angry after twice being asked to show his pass, but has denied swearing. The Prince of Wales has told the BBC that his wife is doing really well following her cancer diagnosis earlier on this year. Prince William was speaking in Cape Town ahead of the Earthshot Prize Awards ceremony tonight, where 5 projects will win prizes of £1 million each. From there, our senior royal correspondent, Daniela Relf, reports.
Earthshot in South Africa, it's something personal for you as well as bringing the prize here professionally.
Yeah, no, it's. I've been greatly looking forward to the time I could bring Earthshot to Africa. I love this continent and spent many a year looking around, exploring it, and just really thrilled to have the reception and the kind of the exuberance and energy that's going to be in this room tonight around Earthshot in South Africa.
I mean, I've heard a lot this week from you about hope, about optimism, about positivity. It is a tough political climate for the environment at the moment. How can you make sure the Earthshot message lands?
I think everyone wants some hope and wants some optimism, and I think the Earthshot encompasses urgent optimism. That's what we're here for. And as I think you'll see tonight, the amount of youth from Africa who will be in here, they'll be letting you know and letting everyone know that it matters to them. And without them, you know, the future is looking pretty bleak. So these are the game changers, these are the innovators, these are the inventors that are going to make the world a better place for us in the future.
I mean, I've met some amazing young people here this week in South Africa, really inspirational. Can I ask about your own young people in your family? Are they very interested in what you're doing out here? What about at home, your own environmental strategies at home? What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, you know, every family tries to do what they can to sort of help with the environment, and we go through all the basics of recycling and making sure we minimise water use and turning off lights when you leave the house and stuff like that, and making sure we're just sensible with what we do around the environment. And I think every family has those conversations, and you're just trying to do what you can. The Earthshot Prize has got to be a bit more global than that. We're trying to do big-scale ambition and big-scale business to tackle some of the solutions. But I brought the children along on that journey, and tonight I hope they're watching and they're proud of kind of what we're trying to do here, which is to really galvanise that energy and that enthusiasm to make real impact.
I just asked about the pupper bracelet. Are you wearing it? Can
Yeah,
we have
I've
a
got
little
it on
look at it.
today, yeah. It's there.
Can you tell us about it?
Well, this is a I think a relic, if you like, from a Taylor Swift concert that my daughter decided that she wanted to create a bracelet for, and she gave it to me when I came away. So I promised I'd wear it and try not to lose it while I was out here.
I can't have you here. Our audiences would want to know how your wife is. It's been a tough year for you. How is the princess?
She's doing really well, thanks, and hopefully she's watching tonight and sort of cheering me on. But no, she's been amazing this whole year, and I know she'll be really keen to see it tonight be a success.
And a reminder of our top headline this afternoon. Donald Trump has won the US election, making a historic return to the White House. And coming up, there's a warning that millions of households in England and Wales may struggle to afford higher water bills when they go up next April. OK, we're going to have a full weather forecast in the next half an hour, but now it's time for a quick look at the weather for you with Stav. Hi, Stav.
Hi there, Ben. Thanks very much. Good afternoon to a lucky few of you out there getting to see some sunshine. The best of it, again, has been across north-east Scotland and some glimmers as well across sheltered eastern parts of the Pennines, particularly north-east England. But for many of us, the skies are pretty gloomy and cloudy once again, like this weather watcher in Poynton in Cheshire depicts. And that's how it's looking really for the rest of the working week. And even as we head into the weekend, there'll be very little change, as our weather will be dominated by high pressure. As we push in towards the weekend, could start to see a little bit of rain across northern and western areas, but most places will stay dry, and those temperatures remaining on the mild side for the time of year. I'll have more for you later, Ben.
All right, Stav, many thanks. See you later on. So, as we have been reporting, Donald Trump is to return to the White House as the 47th President of the United States, and he has promised what he calls a new golden age for America. Well, the defeated Democratic candidate, Kamala Harris, is expected to speak to supporters later on. Let's go back now to John in Washington for the very latest on this historic day. John.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, it's just after 8:30 in the morning here. So let's take a look at what the American news outlets are saying about this election result. Start with the New York Times, which says Donald Trump storms back into office, returning to power after a dark and defiant campaign. The Washington Post marks Trump's triumph, saying that he vows to fix everything in office. It also suggests that Kamala Harris will speak later today. And the Wall Street Journal shows a breakdown of the results of the presidential race for all the US states. It says Donald Trump's win in Wisconsin is the one that pushed him to victory. And this is how the TV networks here have been reporting the result.
All right, right now the map tells the story. We are well into the morning here in New York, and there is much more red than blue.
Welcome back to CBS News Election Night headquarters here in New York. A big night for Republicans and Donald Trump.
Now project that former President Donald Trump will be our next president, the 47th president of the United States.
Well, Mr. Trump addressed supporters in Florida in the early hours of this morning. He was able to declare victory as the results were still coming in, and he promised a new golden age for America. Let's hear him.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that. We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day, I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
That was about 2 o'clock in the morning, US time. So how did Donald Trump win this election? Christian Fraser has been taking a look and crunching the numbers.
Here are the 7 battleground states, all of it in red. How did Donald Trump do it? We're going to look for clues in these top 3 battleground states, starting in Michigan. They make cars in Michigan, in Detroit, and just across the 8-mile road from Detroit is Macomb County. It is white, working class. It's the sort of blue-collar area where Donald Trump has been running up the vote. They used to vote for Democrats here. They would have belonged to unions, but look at the margin on the night. 16 here in Macomb County. Roll it back to 2020, it's 8. And you see a similar pattern not far away in Pennsylvania. Look at the margins in these smaller, white, working class areas across the top of the map here. 80, 75, 73. This is the culmination of the realignment that Donald Trump began in 2016 in rural America, but now added to the white working class vote is the Latino vote. This is Berks County. Reading, a city in Berks County, is 70% Latino. Look at that, nearly 12 points on the night. Spin it back to 2020, it was just 8. If you need further evidence of how that Latino vote is now skewing towards the Republicans, then you need look no further than Nevada. This is Las Vegas, Clark County. It's 70% of the vote statewide. They used to say that Democrats needed a 10-point margin in Clark County to win the state. In 2008, Barack Obama had 19. That slipped to 15 in 2012. It went down to 11 with Hillary Clinton, then 9 with Joe Biden. And last night, Clark County went down to 1. What does that tell us across the map? Well, it says to me that white, working class voters, Latino voters were more concerned about the economy and inflation.
Christian Fraser there with all the data. Well, Donald Trump doesn't move back into the White House straight away. His inauguration will be in January, so there's a transition time. But of course, he knows the building very well, doesn't he? Because he moved out 4 years ago, and now he's going to be moving back again. We'll have a little bit more shortly, but now it's time to join our colleagues with the news where you are.
Thanks, John. On BBC London, the Dartford crossing trips, which ended with bailiffs at the door. We hear from people who say they were harassed by private debt collectors. Good afternoon, I'm Alice Salfield. Our top story this lunchtime. A BBC London investigation has found private debt collection firms have been used to claim more than £100 million from people using the Dartford crossing in the past 5 years. Drivers have told us they experienced intimidation and harassment over fines they believe were issued in error. National Highways, the government agency responsible for the bridge crossing, which connects Kent and Essex, says cases are only referred as a last resort. Our senior investigations reporter Charlotte Rose has been to meet some of those affected.
This is the moment Rachel Canning found a bailiff at her front door at 8 a.m. while getting her son ready for school. He'd come to her home in East London over 2 unpaid Dartford crossings.
I sent this through yesterday.
She tells him she's appealing the fines because she had a Dart Charge account and wasn't told it had been suspended.
The guy was quite abrupt, quite pushy, quite rude, made me very uncomfortable. It really upset my son. He was harassing me the whole time. He was texting me, phoning me.
In the end, she paid up in full and was later refunded when her appeal was successful. But Rachel is not alone. Since 2019, enforcement agencies contracted by Dart Charge have handled 2.3 million cases and collected almost £112 million in debt. 3 main firms are currently used: CDER Group, Marston and Bristow and Souter. In 2023, 1 in 5 people who received a fine later had their case passed on to debt collectors.
Sorry, I didn't mention that.
Andy Coote's ordeal with Dart Charge has gone on for over 10 months. He commutes from Kent to London for work, but like many was unaware his Dart Charge account had been suspended and he racked up 34 fines. He began to pay the penalties, but more kept arriving and some were passed to a debt collection firm.
I got to a point where I couldn't function and I had to speak to my governor and said, I can't come into work today.
At this point, he was told he owed almost £2,500.
So it's actually very intimidating. In fact, I used to get texts, the first one normally being around about 6 o'clock in the morning with, you have outstanding finances. 15 minutes later, you have outstanding finances. And you would get 3 or 4 of those per day.
Rachel and Andy have now been refunded the money they paid to bailiffs, but they say no one from Dart Charge has ever apologised for the toll it took on them. Charlotte Rose, BBC London News.
Well, National Highways said that in each of these cases, the person either did not have an active account when they made the crossing or the payment method on the account had not been updated, which is why penalties were issued. It said almost 95% of crossings are paid on time and without complication. CDER Group says once a case has been passed to them, they're unable to suspend enforcement action unless they receive payment or an instruction from the National Highways. It added it supports people with payment plans. The Mayor of London has put out a statement saying he thinks many Londoners will be anxious about the outcome of the US presidential election. He added they might feel fearful about what it will mean for democracy, women's rights and the impact on the international situation in the Middle East and Ukraine. Sadiq Khan has been a vocal critic of Donald Trump over the years, including on a recent trip to New York during the Labour Party conference. Responding to his comments, the leader of the Conservative group on the London Assembly, Neil Garrett, said it was important to recognise the legitimate winner of a free and fair election, and he accused Sadiq Khan of trying to use the American election as a ruse to distract from his own failures in office. NHS support staff at the Lister Hospital in Stevenage have walked out as part of a 3-day strike over claims they've been shortchanged for years. The union Unison says clinical support workers at hospitals run by East and North Hertfordshire NHS Foundation Trust have been paid at a lower band than they should have. The trust said it's made a fair offer, which has been accepted by a number of workers. A nightclub in Brentwood, which was made famous on the reality show The Only Way is Essex, is up for sale. The Sugar Hut opened in 2004 and has gone on the market for nearly £4 million. It was owned by one of the stars of the TV programme, Mick Norcross, before he died. Next, when he was born, Johnny Bayamungu's parents were told he wouldn't live. But now, at 20 years old, he's gone on to win a bronze medal in the Transplant Football World Cup. A rare condition that affects the abdominal muscles and can affect the kidneys, called prune belly syndrome, meant that after years of poor health, he needed a transplant, which he says transformed his life. It meant he was able to get back to playing football and was selected to represent England in this year's Transplant World Cup. Carl Mercer reports.
Tag someone, arms out, arms out.
Coach Johnny is very much in charge.
3, 2, 1, freeze.
This is where the 20-year-old finds himself 5 days a week, teaching in the playgrounds at Marshgate Primary in Richmond, with a bunch of enthusiastic young ones.
Sasha, what are you doing, Sasha?
It's also a place Johnny never expected to find himself, born with a rare condition called prune belly syndrome.
When I was born, my parents got told that I wouldn't live. And then obviously I'm here today, but so then it went to after a year he wouldn't live, after 2 years he wouldn't live, he'd be lucky to make it past 5. So yeah, I'm lucky to be here today.
A kidney transplant 3 years ago changed his life and led earlier this year to Johnny being selected to play for England in the first Transplant Football World Cup in Italy.
A dream for everyone, I think, is to represent their country, play football. But to finally do it, it's amazing. It's a great opportunity.
And what did you come away with?
We got 3rd place in the end. Got the classic England fashion. We got knocked out by Spain, but came 3rd place. So.
Not on penalties?
No, not on penalties. We lost 2-1 in the final minutes.
Hi Jimmy, can I just give you, so that one is for one of the young adults. And
watching his progress back in London was Dr Emma Salisbury, who runs the young adults kidney unit at Hammersmith Hospital. She's known him since before he had his transplant.
Johnny is an amazing guy who, you know, he's always been like that. You know, that's thanks to his parents, thanks to who he is. But for me, he represents everything that I wish for all our young adult patients. He has been dealt a rough deal in life, but and I'm sure there have been moments of doom and gloom. I know there have been. I know there, of course, how could you not feel sorry for yourself? But Johnny has just got up and taken every opportunity that has been given to him and run with it. And he's never let his kidney condition hold him back.
Get ready. 3, 2, 1, go, 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 go.
That second chance, one that Johnny is grabbing with both hands.
Coaching in school and teaching were things I never thought I'd be able to do. But now being able to teach every day of the week and teach fabulous kids is amazing.
Absolutely. That was Johnny Bayamungu. Now it's time for a look at the weather. Here's Katerina Christodoulou.
Hello there, good afternoon to you. Well, the weather story is very similar again today. Mostly cloudy skies. That cloud may well be thick enough to produce 1 or 2 spots of drizzle. Apart from that, it should stay largely dry. And it's high pressure dominating, really keeping things settled and quiet today and over the coming days. You can see through the course of this afternoon, there is a lot of cloud around. Apart from 1 or 2 spots of drizzle, it should stay mostly dry with a gentle breeze. Temperatures above average, we're looking at highs highs of around 13 degrees. So this evening and overnight, it stays largely dry for all areas. There'll be plenty of cloud lingering, and we may get the occasional clear spell breaking through. So there is a chance of a few pockets of mist and fog again. Temperatures will fall away to around 9 to 10 degrees. So a mild start to Thursday morning. Any mist and fog will gradually lift. We are going to start off mostly cloudy, and it looks like that cloud is going to be quite stubborn through much of the day. Staying largely dry, may brighten up occasionally, and we're looking at highs tomorrow of around 14 degrees. So temperatures remain above average for this time of the year, and then similar again on Friday, mostly cloudy skies, and it should stay dry.
That's all from BBC London. Now it's back to the rest of the BBC News at 1 with John Kay in Washington and Ben Brown in the studio. Bye-bye.
Welcome back. There is a warning that millions of households in England and Wales may struggle to afford higher water bills when they go up next April. The regulator, Ofwat, has proposed letting water companies increase bills by 21% above inflation over the next 5 years. Our business reporter Peter Ruddick has more details.
Water companies say they need to put our bills up to improve leaky pipes, reduce sewage spills and build new reservoirs. But with finances so tight, many households appear to be worried. The average household water bill in England and Wales is currently due to go up by £94 over the next 5 years. And what we've heard today is that 4 in every 10 households, well, they say they would struggle to afford these higher bills. The Consumer Council for Water says 38% of people think that if bills do go up, well, they consider spending less on essentials.
There needs to be much better support, much more comprehensive support for people who are struggling with affordability issues. There are reduced tariffs around. They're called social tariffs, so basically reduced water bills. But they're a postcode lottery. So what really needs to happen is a much more consistent and comprehensive single social tariff so that every water customer across England and Wales benefits from the same level of support if they're struggling to pay their bills.
Now, water companies cannot legally cut off your supply, and as you were hearing, there are social tariffs available with every supplier for people who need it, although these do differ from region to region. Now, if you don't qualify for those, well, your water company may be able to help you with a flexible payment plan. Or, of course, you could ask to take a bit of a payment break. The water company should also be able to offer you access to debt support. There is still an unknown as to how much bills will exactly go up by. Water companies and the regulator are in negotiation, and we should know more by the end of the year. But given water company performance and the issue with household finances, any increase likely to be unpopular and difficult to manage.
Right, back to the US election now, and this is the live view of the White House this lunchtime. Donald Trump re-elected to serve as a second term as US President, 4 years after being voted out of office. Well, back to John Kay, who's in Washington for us. And John, at 78, it makes him the oldest president to enter the White House.
That's right. Yeah, when he returns here in January. I think for me, Ben, the defining moment during our results programme last night was a split screen. On one side, Donald Trump's jubilant supporters were punching the air and dancing in Florida. And at exactly the same time, on the other side of the screen, there was a spokesman for Kamala Harris telling her followers in Washington that they should just go home from what was meant to be a victory party. We've talked about foreign affairs. We've talked about the UK's relationship with America. Let's consider the impact of President Trump's return to the White House on business. Simon Jack is our business editor. And Simon, what's been the reaction of the financial markets and what does it tell us?
Pretty significant, John. What we've seen is that most people, not all, think that a Trump presidency will push prices in the US up. Why? Because tax cuts, which have been promised, will put more money in people's pockets. At the same time, tariffs on imported goods, also threatened, will reduce supply. That can push up inflation, that will keep interest rates in the US higher, and that can mean that the currency, you get more money holding dollars. And you've seen, basically, if you look at the bottom there, a pound would buy you $1.30. Yesterday, it buys you $1.28. 2028. Also, a lot of deregulation is promised, and that means that newer forms of money like Bitcoin saw a massive surge to a record high today, up 7%. And of course, some American companies will be protected from foreign imports, like Tesla. His new best friend runs Tesla, Elon Musk. Shares there up 13%. We wait to see what the impact of these proposed tariffs or threatened tariffs will be on global growth, including that of the UK.
Simon Jack, thank you very much indeed. Here, Katrina Perry, who's hosting our programme overnight, is still up, and she's with us again now. Katrina, I think what a lot of people are probably wondering this lunchtime back home is Donald Trump lost 4 years ago. Now we have a decisive victory. What has changed?
Well, Donald Trump managed to grow his base, which is something that is really causing a lot of consternation here. How did he do it? Since 2020, we had the January 6th riots on Capitol Hill, not far from where we are here. He was impeached a second time. We had all of those criminal and legal actions. He's a convicted felon now. But yet he had this simple message which seems to have resonated with voters. Were you better off under me 4 years ago than you are now? And it seems that American people responded to that with a resounding yes. He grew his base in areas that his campaign had targeted very specifically. They went after younger men aged 18 to 25. They appear, from what we can see from the exit polls, to have got a lot of those people. They also went after people who hadn't voted ever before, who had not felt engaged in the political system. They seem to have got those as well. And they also very specifically targeted Latino voters and black voters, which would have been the long-stay of the Democratic Party, but were also motivated by that message around the economy, the inflation and the cost of living crisis.
And now he's got to fulfil his promises and deliver. How do you think a second term will compare with the first 4 years of Donald Trump?
Well, Donald Trump hasn't changed in the meantime, so I don't think we should expect anything tremendously different. But that is the question that Americans are asking themselves this morning, and it's the question that's being asked in foreign capitals around the world, let's be honest. This is a very divided country. It's very polarised. We've seen that from the results. Donald Trump won, of course, but a huge number of people also voted for Kamala Harris, and they're going to be feeling very sore and upset tomorrow. And there was a very emotional and negative campaign run by the Democrats, Kamala Harris, saying Donald Trump was a fascist. Well, that individual is now the president of this country. He said in an interview on the first day he'll be a dictator, but only for the first day. And he said he will drill, baby, drill, which is referring to allowing fracking on a more widespread basis here and rolling back some other environmental measures. But a lot will also hinge on what the current occupant of the White House does, Joe Biden. We haven't heard from Kamala Harris yet. We haven't heard from Joe Biden yet. He's still the president for another 2.5 months. There has to be what's laid out in American law as a peaceful transition. Well, there doesn't have to be, but there's supposed to be. So the tone that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris take in terms of handing over that power to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance will set the tone.
Katrina, you and your colleagues here in Washington are going to have a busy time, aren't you?
Sure are.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us this lunchtime. It's beautiful sunshine here. Let's find out what the weather's going to be like at home. Stav.
Thanks very much, John. Yes, indeed, big differences in the weather compared to DC to here. We've got the grey, gloomy skies overhead for most of the country, and the outlook really for the rest of the week into the weekend is little change. Our area of high pressure will continue to dominate. A few lucky spots seeing the sunshine this afternoon. Northern, northeast Scotland, maybe some across northeast England, perhaps North Wales too. Glimmers, the odd glimmer elsewhere, but most places staying rather grey and gloomy. There's temperatures again the mid-teens in the warmest spots, generally around 11 to 14 degrees. Tonight it stays cloudy for most. Where we have some clear skies, for example, across the northeast of Scotland, there could be a few cooler spots. Otherwise, it's a mild night to come for the time of year, 8 to 11 degrees. So we start tomorrow off on a mild note. More of a breeze across northern and western areas. That may help to just break up the cloud a little bit. But again, it's going to be a rather grey day for most of us, with limited sunshine. Again, probably northern Scotland faring best with that. And similar sorts of temperatures, low to mid-teens. So that's a little above par for the time of year. Friday, we could just start to see this weather front encroaching into western areas, but I think most places will stay dry, rather cloudy again, with limited sunshine, best of it in the north, and similar sorts of temperatures. Into the weekend, these weather fronts try to make inroads. I think the one on Saturday will tend to fade out over the Irish Sea as it moves through. So you could see a few showers in Northern Ireland, the odd one western Scotland. But again, looking at the map, it's going to be rather cloudy with limited sunshine. Again, those temperatures pretty similar, but more of a breeze across northern and western areas. As we head into Sunday, this next weather front could make better progress across the country, more of a breeze with a different air mass. So we could see some spells of rain spreading across Northern Ireland and Scotland, maybe the odd shower western England and Wales, and the skies might brighten up with some good spells of sunshine on Sunday. But stay tuned to the forecast for that. For most of England and Wales, it's cloudy, and those temperatures again around the mid-teens. And the outlook into next week, high pressure dominates. It's going to stay fine and settled. Back to you, John.
OK, Stav, thank you very much indeed. Clive will be here at 6 o'clock with more reaction and analysis from our team of correspondents and editors. But that's it from the News at 1 in Washington on the day Donald Trump made his big political comeback. Have a good afternoon.